One wild plant replaces 6 industries, and once you understand why, you will never look at food, medicine, or agriculture the same way again. Because this story is not about a plant. It is about a system that decides what you are allowed to know. Somewhere on Earth, in places where nothing else survives, there is a plant that should not exist. It grows where oxygen thins to the edge of human collapse, where soil turns to dust, where salt kills roots and temperature swings would destroy modern crops in days. It thrives at 15,000 feet in the Himalayas. It clings to wind-scoured coastal cliffs. It spreads through the Gobi Desert where summers burn above 100 degrees and winters freeze below -40. And it does not struggle there. It dominates. It produces dense clusters of glowing orange berries pressed so tightly against thorned branches they look artificial, like warning lights placed by nature itself. And inside those berries is a biochemical structure that quietly replaces entire industries you interact with every single day. Supplements, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, gut health, cardiovascular support, hormone therapy. One plant, 6 markets. And that is exactly why you were never taught its name. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is economics. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Because the moment you ask the obvious question, everything changes. If this plant exists, if it has existed for tens of millions of years, and if ancient civilizations relied on it as primary medicine, then why is it absent from modern life? Why is it not in hospitals? Why is it not in grocery stores? Why do most doctors never mention it? Why does it never appear in nutrition guidelines? The answer is not that it does not work. The answer is that it works too well in the wrong way. To understand why, you have to start where modern industry does not want you to look. Deep time. Long before laboratories, before patents, before supply chains, nature solved problems we are still struggling with. This plant evolved under relentless pressure. Extreme cold, extreme heat, nutrient-poor soil, constant environmental stress, and under that pressure, it developed something rare. Not just nutrients, but systems, delivery mechanisms, integrated solutions. Inside a single berry, it packages fat-soluble vitamins with the oils required to absorb them. Vitamin A, D, E, and K are useless without fat. Most plants give you one without the other. This plant gives you both, already optimized for human biology. That alone would make it remarkable. But that is not why industries look the other way. The real disruption begins with fats. Most people are taught that fats are simple. Good fats, bad fats. Omega-3, omega-6, maybe omega-9, but there is a fourth category almost never discussed. Omega-7, palmitoleic acid. A fatty acid so rare in the plant kingdom that entire supplement companies are built around synthesizing it. This plant does not synthesize it. It produces it naturally, in massive concentrations. Up to 40% of its oil content. Nothing else in the plant world comes close. And omega-7 does something profoundly inconvenient. It repairs mucous membranes, the internal linings of the human body. The gut, the eyes, the mouth, the lungs, the urogenital system. These tissues are where chronic disease begins. Inflammation, dryness, breakdown, and modern medicine treats them separately. Eye drops for eyes, creams for skin, pills for digestion, hormones for tissue atrophy. Each problem, its own product, its own revenue stream. Omega-7 does not respect that segmentation. It restores tissue integrity systemically, from the inside. Which means one plant addresses conditions currently divided into 6 different industries. And here is where the silence becomes intentional. In 2014, a peer-reviewed study published in the journal Maturitas followed postmenopausal women suffering from vaginal atrophy, a condition typically treated with hormone replacement therapy. The study did not use hormones. It used oil from this plant. The result was measurable improvement in tissue health and elasticity. No estrogen. No pharmaceutical intervention. A plant-based oil restored function. Think carefully about what that means. A non-hormonal substance achieving results in a domain dominated by prescription drugs. That alone is enough to ensure it never becomes common knowledge. But this is not an isolated case. Traditional medical systems documented these effects centuries ago. The ancient Greeks observed that horses fed on these berries developed glossy coats, faster wound healing, and increased endurance. They named the plant Hippophae, shining horse. That was not symbolism. That was data. When Carl Linnaeus formally classified the plant in 1753, he kept the ancient name because the biological effect had been independently observed across cultures separated by geography, language, and time. In Tibet, beginning in the 8th century, physicians compiled the Rijud-zi, the four medical tantras, a 156-chapter medical canon that still forms the basis of Tibetan medicine today. This plant appears repeatedly throughout those texts. Not as an add-on, not as an alternative, as primary treatment. Digestive disorders, respiratory disease, cardiovascular conditions, skin injuries, internal inflammation. For over 1,200 years, this plant was prescribed continuously by physicians whose survival depended on real-world outcomes, not marketing claims. And that continuity is critical. Because ineffective remedies do not survive 1,000 years of use, only functional ones do. So, if the evidence is ancient and modern, empirical and biochemical, why is this plant missing from industrial systems? The answer lies not in science, but in logistics. This plant refuses to be industrialized. Its branches are armored with dense, razor-sharp thorns capable of piercing leather gloves. Mechanical harvesting becomes dangerous. But danger is not the real problem. Efficiency is. The berries do not detach cleanly from the branch. They cling directly to the wood. Their skin is so thin that handpicking causes them to burst instantly. No clean yield. No scalable harvest. Modern machines designed for apples or cherries crush them into pulp. The only viable harvesting method is extreme. Entire branches must be cut, flash frozen at -40 degrees, then violently shaken so the frozen berries detach intact. This process is expensive, labor-intensive, energy-intensive. It does not fit the commodity model. Industrial agriculture prioritizes crops that can be harvested by machine, stored for years, transported globally, and processed cheaply. Corn, soy, wheat. Shelf stability matters more than nutrient density. This plant demands immediate processing, cold storage, and careful handling. It refuses to behave like a commodity. And that makes it economically invisible. Not because it lacks value, but because it cannot be extracted efficiently. And yet, governments quietly know exactly what this plant can do. Not for humans, for land. Its roots form a symbiotic relationship with Frankia bacteria that pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and fix it into the soil. That means no fertilizer, no chemical input. The plant feeds itself while enriching the ground around it. Its root system stabilizes hillsides, prevents erosion, and restores degraded land where nothing else can grow. In the 1990s, the Chinese government launched massive ecological restoration projects, planting this plant across millions of acres to stop desertification, not as food, as infrastructure. Research from the Chinese Academy of Sciences documents its effectiveness. The same plant that repairs mucous membranes repairs topsoil. While industrial agriculture depletes land and requires constant chemical correction, this plant reverses damage naturally. That makes it not just a nutritional threat, but an agricultural one. Because it represents a model that does not require fertilizers, pesticides, or annual replanting. A model that does not depend on constant inputs. And systems built on constant consumption cannot tolerate solutions that reduce dependency. So the plant remains where it has always been, growing wild. On cliffs, in deserts, along coastlines, unmarketed, unbranded, unpatented. Most people never hear its name. But now you are asking the right question. If one wild plant can replace supplements, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, hormone therapies, gut health products, and soil restoration programs, what else have we forgotten? What other solutions exist outside the industrial framework? And this is where the story turns back to you, because this is not just about knowledge. It is about attention. Systems do not need to ban what they can bury. They do not need to outlaw what they can ignore. They only need to ensure it never becomes common. Never becomes normalized. Never becomes taught. The archive was never locked, it was simply abandoned. And that is the most effective form of control. The plant continues to grow at 15,000 feet. It continues to thrive in salt spray and drought. It continues to produce the same chemistry that sustained civilizations long before supply chains existed. It does not need permission. The only variable left is whether you choose to remember. Because once you see how one wild plant replaces 6 industries, the next question becomes unavoidable. If this exists, what else does? And that question is why this channel exists. This is not about nostalgia. It is not about rejecting science, it is about recognizing patterns. Ancient observation validated by modern data and ignored by industrial systems because it does not scale profitably. That pattern repeats everywhere once you learn to see it. This was one plant, one example, one vault. And now that it is open, it does not close again. Welcome to Lost Nature Vault. The next vault opens soon.